Welcome to my channel. This video is about developing an AutoCAD plugin using C# with Windows Forms. I call this plugin as MultiLayerUpdate layer. This tutorial is quite lengthy as it covers from designing the user interface to developing the code and testing the plugin. Hope you like it and you learn from it. And please subscribe to support this channel. Thank you. Hey guys, welcome back. Our next project is very simple. It's just to update the objects layer in a multiple drawing. So for example, we have a sets of drawings with the same kind of template where they have the same layer structures, and it just so happened that we would like to update a particular layer into a new layer. So that's the objective of our project here. This will be our user interface. We will allow the user to browse a folder where our drawings will be updated, and also we will be displaying all the drawings in this list box, and we will allow the user to enter both the old and the new layers in these text boxes here, as well as provide the display information to track the progress on which particular drawing we are currently processing, and of course the button to click and update the layer. So it's very straightforward, but it gives you an idea on how to process multiple drawings in a folder and basically do what is the requirement of the project. In our case is to update the layer of the objects. So that's it, and I'll see you in the next video where we're going to start coding. Let us now create our project. So open up your Visual Studio 2019 and click on create a new project. Select C# and let's search for the class library and choose the .NET framework, this one here. Next, let me call this as automate update layer, and this will be stored in the C projects folder. Okay, click on create. So in this video, we're going to complete the user interface. We are going to design the form. Okay, so first let me just rename this class 1 to a different file name, update layer util. Click on yes. Next, we need to reference all those .NET API, which are the core, AC Core MGD, AC MGD, and ACDB MGD. You can find them in your AutoCAD installation. So in my case, it's stored in the program files, Autodesk, AutoCAD 2020. This is my version, and you can find it there. Make sure they are all copy local to false. Okay. Alright, so let us now design the form. To do that, all we have to do is right click on the project and add Windows form here. Okay, let me call this as layer update form. Alright, so let us just resize this accordingly and do some property changes. So for the start position, I would like to just make this as the at the center screen mode, so that we can see the progress of the process. And also the topmost property should be true, and we will make sure that the user is not able to maximize the form. Okay, and that's it. Next, we need to add those controls. The first one is the top one, where the user can pick or select a folder. Let's start with the label, and let's just provide here the enter path text. Next, we need to provide the text box. And let's call this as txt path. I would like to also provide a default value here, because I know where my drawings are, so I just put here C temp DWGs. And next will be a button to browse for the drawing files in a certain folder. So let's drag another button here. Let's change the text to browse. And we will call that as btn browse. Okay, next we need to add a list box where we are going to store all the drawings in a folder. So drag one list box. Let's size it accordingly. And let's call this as LSTDWGs. Okay, next we need to provide the user with the text box to enter the old layer, and also text box to enter the new layer. So let's drag a label here. That one will have the text enter old layer, and we have here a text box to store the old layer. Let's call this as txt layer old. And next we need to provide the text box and a label for a new layer. Okay, and another text box, and we are going to call this as txt layer new. Okay, next we need to add one more control, a label control. This is just for the information, so that the user is aware of what's happening in our form. Since we will be interacting with this control in the code, we'll provide a more descriptive label. So let me call this as LBL info and just provide initial text of info. And lastly, we need to provide a button that the user will click to start updating the layer of the drawings. So let's call that as BTN update layer. Let's just provide a text of update layer. And let's make the font bold. Okay. And that's it for our form. In the next video, we are going to code all these events in these controls in the form. Okay, I'll see you there. Now that we have completed our user interface, we can start coding now this form. But let's just spend a few minutes to analyze what are the triggers in this form. The first one is when the form loads, we need to populate this list box with the drawings that can be found in this folder, since we have provided an initial value here. So we will show right away if there are drawings in this temp DWGs folder. That is one event. Another one is when the user clicks on this browse button here to select a folder where the drawing files are stored. That's another event. And then whatever drawing files that the user select will be displayed in this list box. And finally, the last event that we are going to handle is when the user clicks on the update layer button here. Okay, and of course that is based on the inputs for the old layer and the new layer. And we will also be providing the user with the information here so that they know what particular drawing is currently being processed. Okay, so if we right click on our form and click on view code or F7, this is our boilerplate code here, or scaffolding. Nothing except the layer update form initialize component method. So if we go back to our designer and then double click on the form, it will give us this form load event. Okay, so when the form loads, what we need to do is populate list box, and we will be passing a parameter which is the drawing path that will be coming from the txt path, the text, the trim basically get rid of all the extra spaces. So but this method is not yet existing, so we are going to create this method. Just hover over and then click on this arrow down here and generate this populate list box method. So let's change this argument name here. Let's just call that as DWG path. Let's remove this exception. Okay, so to select, or basically to grab all the drawing files in this folder, we will be needing the folder browser dialog. So we do that by using the using expression var folder browser dialog equals new folder browser dialog. And then we need to have a variable that will store the drawing files in that folder. So in that case, we will be needing an array of string. Let's just call that as files equals directory. Oops, we don't have the directory namespace yet, so we need to add it here using system.io input output. So if we go back here, directory that get files, and what is the path? That would be the FBD, the folder browser dialog, that selected path, and the search pattern would be *.dwg. Okay, so now we have all the drawing files in this variable. So load all the drawing files into the list box. So the quickest way to do that is just bind the data source right away. So data source equals files, and that's it. Another way to do that, I just wanted to show you. You can do the for each string dwg in files, just in case you have some application for this in the future. And lst dwgs that items that add, and the dwg. Okay, this one here, just in case you wanted to do some extra processing on the drawing files and maybe trim those paths or anything. So I just wanted to show you on how to manipulate each of these drawing files in this variable here. But in our case, we just need to load it or bind it into the lst dwg's list box. So that's all we need to do. In the meantime, I'll just comment out this one here. We don't need this anymore. And all we need to do now is provide the user with information. Text equals total number of drawings equals lst dwgs that items that count. That's it. And let us save our code. Okay, so in the next video, we're going to code the browse button. Okay, I'll see you there. Welcome back. Let's continue building our project. So in this video, we're going to code the browse button. But before we do that, let me just add one more line here. This is actually to provide the folder browser dialog selected path, which is the dwg path here. Okay, so that should be good enough for this method. So if we go back to our form, this will be the button that we are going to code next. So if we double click on this browse button, it will give us this method. So let's start coding this one. We need to do the same thing with the populate list box. We'll be using the folder browser dialog. And now we need to show the dialog. We will call that as the dialog result, which is result fbd.show dialog. So this will show the dialog form where the user can select the folder where the drawing files are located. So if the result equals dialog result dot OK, and also it's not empty or white space for the selected path. We are going to call the populate list box method, so which means that the user already selected a path or a folder that is valid, and it's not empty or it's not white space. So all we need to do now is call this method populate list box, and then passing on the folder browser dialog that selected path. And that's it for our browse method. In the next video, we're going to code the update button, update layer button. Okay, I'll see you there. So we have coded the events, the form load events, and the browse button event. Our final method for this form is the update layer button here. So let's start coding this event here. Double click on this button, and now we were provided with this method. So when the user clicks on this button, we now need to process the changing of the layer on those drawing files in the list box. So to do that, we need to get a handle of the old layer and the new layer, and also we need to provide the user with the number of objects or counts of drawings in a folder. So let's get started. For the old layer, let us create one variable called old layer, and this will be the text box that's coming from the txt layer old, the text that trim. Same thing with the new layer. Let us call that as new layer, txt layer new, the text that trim. And we also need a variable, integer variable, that will give us the status or which particular drawing is being processed, like processing 1 of something, 2 of something. So let's just call that as I equals initialized to 1. And next, we will be calling a method from this class, which means that all the layer processing will be happening in this class here, which means that we are just restricting all the UI related code in this user interface, the code behind, but the actual processing of drawing should be separated from the form code. That is a better practice. So this particular class here, it doesn't have any method yet. This is where we're going to create our changing of layer or updating of layer. So in the meantime, we can just initialize or instantiate this update layer util. So update layer util, let's just call that as util equals new update layer. Later on, we are going to create the method in that class. Next, we need to get the total count of the drawings. So let's just call that as lstdwgs that items that count. Okay, next we now have to loop through the list box and process the drawing one at a time. So to do that, do you recall the for each? That is where we can use it here. for each string DWG file, let's just call that as DWG file, in LST DWGs dot items, we will provide the user with the information. So LBL info dot text equals processing, let's say the I, which is converted to string, processing one of the total count, also to string, and the drawing file. So what this code means here is just we're showing in the info label processing 1 of 5, for example, 1 of 2 of 5, and the drawing file here. Okay, and let's just also call the, change the color to color.green. And now we are going to call the method from this class. So in here, let me just go here and create a method. Let's call that as public void process layer update. And in this method, we will be needing 3 parameters, which is the DWG path that consists of the path and the file name, and also the old layer, and the third one is the new layer, of course. And that will be our method. So if we go back to our form code here, the form event here, so now we can call that method. So util dot process layer update, and we will be passing on those 3 parameters. So we have here the DWG file, the old layer, and the new layer. And of course we just have to increment the value of I so that it will increment for each iteration in this loop here. And finally, once all the drawing files in the LST list box have been processed, we are going to provide the user with the info. Updating of layer completed successfully. And that's it. So in the next video, we're going to complete this method here. I'll see you there. Welcome back. Let us now complete the method process layer update. So first off, let's get rid of these namespaces. We don't need those. Instead, we're going to use the Autodesk AutoCAD.NET API. So using Autodesk.AutoCAD.application services. The other one is database services. Also the editor input. And the last one that we need is the runtime. All right. So first, we need to get hold of the document object. Document doc equals application. The document manager that open. So basically, we are going to open this drawing file here. And let's initialize the database object. Database db equals doc.database. and also the editor input, editor edt equals doc.editor. Now that we have this AutoCAD drawing open, we have to lock the document. All right. Oops. Okay. Next, we are now going to code the selection of object based on the old layer, as well as updating the entities layer to the new layer. So let us wrap the code into a try catch block. So type in try and press tab twice. We will handle this exception later on. Next, we need to use the transaction. Transaction trans equals db.transaction manager that start transaction. So for the selection set, for the filter, we need to have a type value. So type value, this will be an array. Let's initialize a variable TV. That would be new type value. We have one entry in our array, so should indicate there one. And then tv.set value, that would be new typed value. And we will cast that one into an integer, the first entry. That will be a dxf code dot layer name, which is equal to the old layer. So in this line of code, we are basically selecting or creating a filter to select the objects in the old layer. So now that we have the typed value, we can create the selection filter. Let's just call that as filter equals new selection filter and passing the type value, which is the TV. And now we need the prompt result or prompt selection result. Let's just call that as PSR equals EDT, the editor object, that select all and passing the filter. So in this line of code, we are basically filtering. We are now applying the filter in our drawing to select all the objects under the layer old layer. Okay, next we need to just validate the PSR status. If the prompt status is okay, then we have object selected. So we need to have a selection set that will store the prompt result value. So selection set ss equals psr.value. Okay, now that we have all the objects in our selection set, we can now loop through that values or entities in the selection set. So loop through the selection set and change the layer of the object. So we will be using the same for each statement. Selection object for each selected object. Let's just call that assobj. In the selection set, we will be changing the layer. So let's just validate if sobj is not equal to null, then create a new entity and assign the object to that entity so that we can change the layer. So entity ent equals trans.getObject, the selected object, sobj dot object id, then open mode for write as entity. Now we can change the entity layer to the new layer. There you go. However, we'll also handle the else statement in this condition here. If there is no object selected or no object found, we'll just message here that there is no object selected. That's it. And then now we can commit the transaction. Okay, so in this code block here, we have filter all the objects under the old layer, and then we loop through the selection set and change the entities layer to the new layer here. Now that is done, we have to save our drawing. Save as same file name, then the version, the current version, and then we close our document. Alright, so that's it for our code. However, for the catch block here, since we wrap them in a try catch block, we'll have to make sure that we capture it in this catch block. So we need the Autodesk that AutoCAD runtime.exception so that it will be specific to AutoCAD, and then we just write here the error encountered, the error message, and then of course trans dot, oh no need, it's just like that. So since the transaction is inside the try catch, so anyway, that's it. That's all for our process layer update method. There is one more method that we need to create so that we can see the form. So when we run the plugin, that will be our entry point to display the form. So to do that, all we have to do is create a new method that would be public void. Let's just call that as update layer. And now we need to instantiate the form. So layer update form, and let me call that as layer form, equals new layer update form. And then all we have to do now is show that form. And that's it. And we need to have a command that will be executed in the command prompt, because this is not recognized in the command prompt. So we need to provide a command method, and let's just call that as ul update layer. Simple as that. And that's all for our update layer util class. So if we go back to our form here, this call from this method will now be executed without any problem. Okay, so that's it for this video. In the next video, we're going to test our code. All right, I'll see you there. Now that our code has been completed, we are now ready to test in AutoCAD. So let us check the debug and then click on this Automate Update Layer properties. So we would like to start AutoCAD when we start this project. So browse your AutoCAD exe or installation file. In my case, I have here in the program files Autodesk AutoCAD 2020 and select on acad.exe. Okay, next for our build, click on Build menu and Configuration Manager. We will be using the 64-bit. So if you are using Windows 10 or Windows 7 Pro, you should use the x64. And let us build our solution. We have an error. Where is this update layer update form? So let's double click on this. Yeah, we don't need that. Let's try to build again. Okay, one succeeded. So let us start our project. While AutoCAD is starting, let me open up the temp folder, DWGs. So these are just the drawings that we are going to process. Or maybe let me just copy over this 10 drawings. So this will be our test drawings. Okay, before we run our code, let me just open up one of the drawings so that we can see the layer structures. Let's say the DWG test 1. So I would like to change the, let's say, the walls, or maybe, so these are the walls, which is this one here. And I would like to change it to maybe stairs, just for testing. So we have here the stairs, or we can change the stairs to walls, for example. Or let's do it other way so that we can see that all these walls will be turning into stairs layer, just for testing. So it depends on your type of drawing. You can just use it accordingly. But in my own testing, just to show that the program is working, we're going just to change the walls into stairs for the layer. Alright, so let me close this drawing file. And now we are ready to load our plugin. Netload. So this will be in our projects. Automate update layer, bin, x64 debug, and automate update layer DLL. Okay, we should now have the command UL, okay, update layer. There you go. And there is our form. As you can see, we have here 1, 2, 3, all the 10 drawings from this folder. Okay, now let's try this browse functionality first. So let's say from this PC, we have the temp. Let's say select the more DWGs. We have here all the drawings in that folder. So there is one bit of enhancement here. So once the user select a different folder, it should update the text box here with the selected path. Okay, but in our case, we'll just use the temp DWGs folder. I'll leave it out to you for enhancement, but that's one that I can think of as a better enhancement for this plugin. So next, we have to specify the layer that we're going to replace. So as discussed earlier, as mentioned earlier, I would like to change the walls into stairs, and then we can start now our code. Click. Yeah, you can see that it changes from white to magenta, and see the information that we are having here: processing 5 of 10, and then the file name changes accordingly every time it opens up the drawings. And done. 10 drawings done in less than a minute. Okay, we can run it again. Let's say from stairs, we change it to walls. Let's try one more time. Now it changes back to wall. It also changes the original stairs layer into wall. That's just for testing, but it means our code is working. So depending on the complexity of your drawing, it might take a little bit of time, or depending on how many drawings you have in your folder. So yeah, that's it. Give it a try and then do some enhancements, like adding validations on this text box by making sure that there is an entry. And also, if you want to go further deeper into the validation, you can also add to check if there is an existing layer in the drawing. Okay, so that's it for this project, and I'll see you in the next one.